It's another fine day at Camp Dynasty. I am Counselor Austin, joined by Counselor Collin. And the moment of truth has arrived at Camp Dynasty. The NFL draft has come and it has gone. And with it, landing spots for the 2026 Dynasty rookie class. Collin, you and I are not here to necessarily break down those spots, but of course we will while we assemble our final top 48 Dynasty rookie rankings for this illustrious 2026 class.
Yeah, it has kind of the landing spots was a interesting experience. The draft as a whole was an interesting experience because a lot of these guys found themselves in homes that maybe we didn't expect. And then it's like, well, it was already kind of weird. Now what do we do, So now we get to go through and figure out what did we do,
And that's it, because for the first time ever, we drafted off of the heels of this crazy draft. So we have already done this plunge of navigating the draft board for real with our own teams. So these rankings are certainly not theoretical in any sense of the imagination. This is what I showed up to the draft with.
Yep.
This is what you showed up to the draft with. So we're going to talk about all of these players and kind of how the value changed, and in some cases changed pretty dramatically. We are going to run 48-1, and how we've done this previously is how we're going to do it again, which is in batches of 6, I believe.
Yep.
Up until the second round, and that's where we'll spend a little bit of additional time on each player. So this is going to be a long episode. So I don't feel the need to sit here and drag this out any longer. Let's dive into it. Your 48 to 43.
My 48 to, so I'll start with my 43 and I'll go down to my 48.
Okay.
Oscar Delp, tight end to the Saints. Damon Claiborne, running back for the Vikings. Kalen Black, running back, 49ers. Brennan Thompson, wide receiver, Chargers. Mike Washington, running back, Raiders. And Deion Burks, wide receiver, Colts.
Okay. We have 2 of the same players, and we have 4 players that I do not have in my 48.
Perfect.
And I'm going to assume that that's going to be a similar story with mine. 43 for me is Akeem Messidor. 44, Mike Washington. 45, Bryce Lance. 46, Jacoby Lane. 47, Brennan Thompson. And 48, Mr. Ty Simpson himself.
Okay.
So, anybody here in my list that you have higher?
I have Ty Simpson at 42, so he's one spot out of this.
Spot. Okay.
Yeah.
So
but other than that, everybody else missed the cut. I don't mind like the Jacoby Lane shout. I think that's fine. And yeah, the rest of them are just finding their way outside.
Yeah. So this is, of course, the second half of the 4th round is going to be the time where you kind of just put your dart throws that are kind of sneaking in there. Let's start with the 2 guys that we have similar, which is Mike Washington and Brennan Thompson. Mike Washington obviously was a very buzzy name in the draft process because of his combine performance, also his Senior Bowl performance, but really started to take off at the combine with the ridiculous time that he ran. And there was a big question of where that was going to land him on NFL draft weekend. And I think what we saw is that the NFL is intelligent and that they didn't overdraft this player just because he was an athletic freak. And unfortunately, he was also drafted to a spot in which he is buried a little bit behind Ashton Genty, of course, with the Raiders. So RB2 potentially there, which can still be something, but Mike Washington seemingly not going to have his opportunity to, fire out of the gates.
Yeah, I think if you have Ashton Genty, Mike Washington a little more worth, a higher draft position potentially, like quote unquote, reach on him and go like snag him so then you have your handcuff. But outside of that, you're just kind of waiting to see with him if something were to happen to Genty and he gets thrust into a starting role. So that's why he's down here. And then Brennan Thompson, speedster Mike McDaniel apparently was banging the table for him in the draft room, and we kind of always chat about Chargers receiver room, get Herbert weapons, and Mike McDaniel bringing this new fresh offense into Los Angeles, and you see him going after one of these small speedsters, which have been successful in the Mike McDaniel offense. You talk about Tyreek and Waddle, and then I'm sure he was in on the Washington acquisition or draft pick as well. And so you come over here and you're getting kind of the same build body type with Brennan Thompson. And so it's like, if the offensive coordinator wants him this bad, who's to say he won't be involved? And there's a ton of athletic upside and a ton of, upside in a pairing with Justin Herbert because of the strong arm and the potential, play action stuff that Thompson could run to take the top off.
Yeah, Thompson isn't a player that we talked about really at all through this whole process because, first of all, of his size, 5'9", 164, already going to be a difficult projection at the NFL level. Of course, an athletic freak, incredibly fast, and it's no surprise that Mike McDaniel was all in on this guy based off of what we know about him from his time in Miami. Not a player that I'm gonna, sit here and say there's a huge opportunity awaiting him here because this is a very crowded room. You have Ladd McConkey, of course. You have Quentin Johnson, who's fifth. Your option was picked up by this team. That was a big question for a while. You have Trey Harris, who they drafted last year. You just have a lot of names here to navigate, and a player of this size, I don't know, rapidly climbs that depth chart. I think he's probably more of that rotational piece that they use to get deep and on special teams potentially, but I had to include him here because I think the match with this offense and the capital that they spent on him was worth a dart throw at least. So he landed at 47 for me.
All right.
So anybody else in your group that you're particularly interested to shout out here that you felt strongly about? I got to get him into my 48.
I wouldn't say. I mean, I think a lot of the tight ends in this class went to interesting spots. I put Delp in here. Got drafted 73 overall, and it's like there was something there with Delp at the beginning of the season. He was in top 5 tight end talks and that kind of stuff. Didn't really amount to much in the Georgia offense, and so kind of got forgotten about. But then he gets the higher draft capital to a team that's needs passing targets. I know they have Juwan Johnson there, but it's like a lot of teams running 2 tight end sets, a lot of teams investing in tight end early in this draft, a lot of blocking tight ends going earlier than expected in this draft. And so you look at maybe this is a 12 personnel team next year, and it's like you run on the back of Travis Etienne, and you're like, all right, I guess Oscar Delp's on the field more than I thought it was going to be. And then it's Jordyn Tyson and Olave on the outside, and that's it. And we're pounding the rock and going play action to make Tyler Shuck's life a little easier. So I don't know how involved he'll be, but that's pretty high draft capital, and some of these tight ends went earlier than I thought they would.
Yeah, one of the stories of the draft was what happened with tight end, and not necessarily the ones that you'd expect. Time will tell if the NFL was right about that or not. But I think Delp was a player that had a lot of conversation around his name in the pre-draft process because you had a lot of people that were big fans because of the notion of who he was and the athlete that he is. And I think for you and I guess I'll speak for myself, when you have followed a player for 3 years and you have just not seen the payoff come, it becomes very hard to be like, yeah, I think he's going to do that in the NFL. It's like, how long have we been talking about Oscar Delp? And I think at one point in summer scouting, I had him as like tight end 2. I think you had him in your top 5 tight ends at one point. Like, it was just like, it feels like this player is going to be the next guy, and he just never was. And so I'm not saying he can't take that jump in the NFL. And I think he is a player that is worth consideration in this range of the draft. I have him just outside of this point, but where they took him and the opportunity that's there for him, I think he's absolutely worth that. I just am very hesitant to be a Delp truther after everything that we've seen unfold with his career at Georgia.
Fair.
All right. So let's dive into the next groups, and then that's where we'll get to talk about Ty Simpson. So you're 42 to 37.
Yeah. Again, I'll start 37, Kevin Coleman. And then I got Katron Allen, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, Max Clare, Ty Simpson. And that's a group that I'm like, and Caleb Douglas. Sorry. It's a group that I put both Miami wide receivers in there because it's like, I don't know what the hell is going on here. And then I started at the wrong one, so Douglas is higher than Kevin Coleman, but I have them right next to each other. And it's like, I don't know what either like Miami's doing here. But then Katron Allen, McNeil-Warren, Max Clare, Ty Simpson. That's my group.
So mine is 37, Justin Joly, 38, Katron Allen, 39, Emmett Johnson, 40, Nick Singleton, 41, Zion Young, 42, Malachi Lawrence, and 43, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. So I'm assuming that you have the running back, some of these running backs a little bit higher.
I have Nick Singleton a little. I have him at 36.
Okay.
But
so
I don't have Emmett Johnson.
Emmett Johnson not in the top 48.
No, sir.
Okay, that's I get it, because we both were. This running back class was not good. It just wasn't. And that was reflected with the NFL draft. This was not a situation where the NFL was taking these guys at irresponsible points of the draft. It was very clear what the NFL thought of this class as a whole. And so I'm not here to overinflate value of players that I didn't even love on film that were then also taken late in the draft. But I think at this point, at the beginning of round 4, is where I stick some of these, they're dart throws. They are. It's Emmett Johnson's behind Ken Walker. Okay, we'll see what that turns into. Nick Singleton on the Titans, that's pretty wide open. And I can see how you had him a little bit higher than this. Katron Allen is the one that I'm really interested by, even despite the fact of how late of a pick he was. I still really like, if there was a back in this class that I was going to be like, day 3, this is the guy that I care about, it was Katron Allen. And to go to Washington, even that late in the draft, I'm still kind of like, I feel like there's a chance. I feel like there's a chance that he can earn snaps for this team. So I have him at the top of the 4th. I don't think you could draft him any higher than that, but it's a player that I would definitely want to leave a draft with if I could.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I have him at 39, so he's a 3rd pick in the 4th round, and that's sitting there like, you have a guy that can compete, that can be a workhorse running back, and in a, like you said, wide open running back room that was kind of a turnstile last year. Had Chris Rodriguez leading in carries at times. You had Bill Krosky-Merritt a few times, and people were excited about him. He was a similar style draft pick, but I think Katron Allen has a little more like maybe pedigree to his name. So I I can definitely 100% see that. And then, like you said, you get some backups, some handcuffs. Singleton, who's at my 36, but we can talk about now, is like in a backfield where it's Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears. Both of them didn't play great last year, but bad offense altogether. So what do you like? What can you expect? But getting like superb athlete into that room with an aging Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, who was never a top end athlete and only really has one functional knee. It's like, who knows what's going to happen there. So, like you said, dart throws that you can take a chance on. So, I like these running backs late. Emmett Johnson, too. I mean, Ken Walker hasn't really had a clean bill of health in a long time. So, if he's working in and he's in a Chiefs offense and they like him enough where, maybe he's sitting behind the Super Bowl MVP right now, but who knows what happens throughout a season. And again, if you have any of these starting running backs, like if you have a Pollard or a Spears, like feel free to take Nick Singleton higher. If you have a Krosky Merritt, like feel free to get Katron Allen a little higher. And same with Ken Walker, where you can have guys that are going to be competing, so you have the starting running back for this team either way.
I've already uncovered the fact that I think I have a numbering error here.
Okay.
But we're gonna make it work.
I did too. That's why I was like, I was like half listening when you were going through your list. I'm like, I totally forgot number 37, and like I had to reorder some stuff. So, Ty Simpson though, I feel like we can talk about.
We have to talk about this.
If you are in Superflex, which this is not, which is why it's like, whoa, Ty Simpson at 42. All right, so Ty Simpson gets drafted by the Rams, and Sean McVay is upset about it, and then he's not upset about it. It's all fine. We just didn't want to make Stafford. And it's just the Aaron Rodgers, Jordyn Love thing all over again, where Packers traded up to get Jordyn Love while Rodgers is still there. And then you got to do damage control with your veteran quarterback. Difference is Rodgers was bad at the time. Stafford just won MVP. Rodgers followed up Jordyn Love by winning MVP. Like, this is a little bit of a different situation, but not a huge difference. So now they're saying, no, of course we're all in on Ty Simpson. We love the kid. And so we have to try to parse through all this by saying, like, hey, ideally for the Rams, this guy doesn't start for like 2 years. And Stafford is their quarterback. So what do we do with Ty Simpson? And we just leave him down here. If you like him a lot, go ahead and take him. I'm probably going to stay away.
So this was obviously the shock of the draft of the first round.
Yeah.
This was something that, we discussed a lot about whether or not he would be a first round pick. I kind of came to the idea that he was going to be, but it was going to be a trade in. And that's what we did in the mock draft last week. For him to go at 13, which is something that was, I think, previously discussed, maybe more when they had the second first, but I'm pretty sure there were still conversations happening once upon a time, maybe even by us, about what if they just took him at 13? Like, Stafford is no spring chicken anymore. Like, what's stopping them from doing this? And the circumstances around it, with obviously McVay and that whole thing. And I personally, I believe him, because my read on it initially was, oh, he hated the pick. But then I was like, wouldn't you want Matthew Stafford to feel comfort in the fact that, like, yes, we took this guy, but like, he's just a guy right now. Like, obviously Stafford is our guy. If I'm McVay, I'm not going to sit up at this microphone and be like, yeah, we're so excited about the future of this team. It's Ty. This is going to be Ty's team. And it's like, no, he's going to be like, yeah, we planning for the future, but like, Matt's my guy and he's the MVP, and that's what we're doing in 2026. And it's like, I get that angle. And I think maybe he overcorrected because of everything that happened with, Rodgers and like that whole dynamic, and Penix with Kirk Cousins. And like, we've seen this play out, and I think he just overcorrected and made himself look very upset about it. But I I kind of feel like once upon a time, I really disliked players like Ty Simpson when I was less plugged into the draft because you'd have these quarterbacks that were like getting talked up by the media, but it's like, yeah, but they're not really like real quarterbacks. Why do I care about this guy? And then they get overdrafted and it's like, oh, yep, this guy sucks. They've screwed up. And I feel like now, because we have been so ingrained in it, I'm almost just like, he's a developmental quarterback. He's going to a developmental quarterback spot with one of the greatest minds in football behind him. Like, I
Feels
kind of,
feels objectively like a good thing.
right. Like, did they need to spend 13 on him? Maybe not. Maybe that's where the error was. But I think all things considered, when you look at what happened, where did he go, and what does it look like for him moving forward, I kind of think it's like one of the best case scenarios that you could have imagined, which is that he doesn't play for at least a year, most likely multiple years, just like Jordan Love, and he gets Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford in his corner while he's developing. And then in 2 years from now, maybe it's time to see what the Ty Simpson era in LA could look like. So obviously that's not a player that you love to roster in one quarterback where you know that he's going to be sitting for probably 2 years. And I don't want to have to spend this roster spot to save him till that point. But if you have a taxi spot, if you are willing to just bet on this player, then I think it's worth the investment to just see what happens.
Yeah, and if like they would have traded, what was it, 12 or 13 to the Chiefs for McDuffie, and then they would have taken Ty Simpson to 28 or whatever it was, like I don't think anybody would care.
Right.
And I think it's just like, whoa, they could have gotten Makai Lemon with this pick. And it's like, yeah, they could have, but they didn't. And now they have a plan for the future at the most important position in the sport.
Okay. So I have some IDPs in here.
Yep.
Do you have any of these guys in your top 48?
I have McNeil Warren in this group also.
Okay. Right, okay.
So we shared that. The other guys didn't make it, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah. So I just opted to stick these edge rushers in here. Messidor was in my last group as well. Like, these are the kind of guys I want to take flyers on in this class because I'm not really interested in some of these wide receivers
Fair.
and like all of that. Like, I'll take the dart throw at like Akeem Messidor, the 22nd overall pick in the draft, who's 25 years old, but also might start for them like immediately, and just see what that looks like. And then, yeah, say like Malachi Lawrence as well was right in that range of the draft, 23. Zion Young, second round pick, but I actually liked him a little bit more than some of these guys. Jolie, I'm assuming, is a player you have higher.
Jolie, I didn't make it.
He didn't make it.
Nope.
Wasn't Jolie like your tight end 2 at one point?
A while. It was like in November,
Okay.
in like mid-season. But yeah, no, I just I didn't love the Broncos landing spot. I thought like, and the draft capital wasn't as high as I would have liked it to be, and so it's like, for a weird player that I kind of like, it's like heart over head. I just kind of gotta take it easy with some of my heart picks.
I get it.
Yeah.
And I like the spot. The draft capital was obviously lower than I would have expected for this player with some of these other tight ends going above him. But I mean, I think this Broncos tight end spot has kind of always been a like, who's going to end up here?
Yeah.
And I think for a player with Jolie's skill set, it's appealing to me what that could look like. Maybe a player that comes up on sleeper court in a couple weeks.
True. I feel like Evan Ingram was like kind of bad last year, and then they add Waddle, who's probably going to be like target hog over the middle of the field, and so that's the concerns I guess I have for the landing spot for him.
Okay, so somehow, despite having a weird double number situation, I think that my list is the same.
Okay.
I don't know how this happened, but let's move to 36 through 31.
Okay. 31, I have Zachariah Branch, went to Atlanta. I have Josiah Trotter, went to Tampa Bay. Here's Jacoby Lane for me, went to Baltimore. Ted Hurst ended up in Tampa Bay. Skylar Bell ended up in Buffalo. And then I have Nick Singleton, who's in Tennessee.
Okay. So mine is 31, Eli Raridan, 32, TJ Parker, 33, Chris Brazzell, 34, Max Clare, 35, Malachi Fields, 36, Zachariah Branch.
Okay.
And so some of the wide receivers that you have in your group, I have in the next group.
I know some of yours I have a little higher as well.
So we've flip-flopped some of these receivers based off of pre-draft grades and flavors and things like that. I also have Trotter in my next group as well. So we're kind of right in the same range here, just kind of on opposite ends of the third round.
Yep.
This is also just a situation too where like you may hear like, oh, Malachi Fields, Zachariah Branch are below like Max Clare and a IDP and Eli Rare. Like these are just wide receivers that I was lower on generally. I don't think guys like Fields and Branch are like huge contributors at the NFL level. I think they're more role players. And so I think that's kind of what I have here in my final rankings, is viewing them more as like solid pieces in offenses that needed them. Absolutely. Like it's a good spot for both of them. Just lower on the players. And then I think Raridan in particular is just a guy that I love. I loved him pre-draft. I loved where he ended up in this draft. I love the spot with the Patriots. So this is definitely a player that I'm looking to bet on in this class.
Yeah, Raridan moved up to 29 for me.
He
flew up for me.
I was gonna say, I know I haven't heard his name yet, but I kind of wasn't sure what that meant.
Yeah, for me, I got like Jacoby Lane, who you were always lower on than I was. I thought went to a good spot at good draft capital at 80 overall. We've been talking about this Baltimore spot. We thought they might go receiver in the first round. They ended up not doing that, but end up going Jacoby Lane. I don't know if he can separate, but he's a fun player, and he's going to be excited catching passes from Lamar. And then it's like, Ted Hurst, who might be buried this year, but also needs a year anyway to adjust probably to NFL speeds, was not he's at Georgia Southern. So it's like, well, what is that adjustment going to look like? And it's good to have a year behind, Godwin and company. Then Skylar Bell, who went to that Buffalo spot, who we're kind of always putting wide receiver with Buffalo because they haven't really had a number one guy since Stephon Diggs left. Nick Singleton, we already talked about. Josiah Trotter goes to a Tampa Bay spot that's getting a lot younger on defense. Levante David is out, and so they've got some things to figure out. They still have some guys there, but if Trotter can be a good player and got really good draft capital in the NFL draft, it seems like they want him to be a contributor sooner rather than later. And then Zachariah Branch, they might throw 100 passes at or behind the line of scrimmage this year. They're probably starting the year with Tua, and then they're moving to Penix. Neither of those guys, Penix throws it down the field, down the boundary, but he doesn't mind throwing a bubble screen. He doesn't mind throwing a slant. He doesn't mind throwing a smoke screen. And Branch, the question is, have you seen him run a route down the field? I don't know if you have, but I don't know if they're going to ask him to do that in Atlanta. But in all seriousness, it's like, what is this player going to be? He got better draft capital than I think I was even expecting at 79 overall, and goes to a team that needs receiver really bad and can just be a playmaker there. So we'll see what that looks like. But just some kind of interesting players with limitations is kind of where I'm at in this back of the third round.
Yeah, let's just jump to the next group because a
Yeah.
lot of those guys are in mine. So you're 30 to 25.
I got Chris Bell went to Miami. Jonah Coleman went to Denver. Dylan Thieneman went to Chicago. Elijah Surratt went to Baltimore. Eli Raridan went to New England, and then Fernando Mendoza went to Las Vegas.
Okay, so players that I have in my top 24, Jonah Coleman and Fernando Mendoza. So we will wait on those. My group here is Dylan Thieneman at 25, Elijah Surratt at 26, Skylar Bell at 27, Josiah Trotter at 28, Chris Bell at 29, and Ted Hurst at 30.
Yeah.
So a lot of those receivers in this round, the same between us. It's just a matter of, did you have them at the top or the bottom of the round? Surratt, well, let's start there.
I sniped him from you.
You, you son of a bitch. You did. One spot ahead of me in our real draft.
Yep.
I'm sitting there.
It was 402 to be like. It's not like I went and like traded up. I stuck and picked at 402 is great value.
It was great value because, and I'm not surprised because I think Surratt was a player that you either loved him or you hated him. And then he went later into the draft, 4th round pick to the Ravens. I think it's a good spot.
Yeah.
And I think he's a lot better than Jacoby Lane.
They're already talking about using him in the slot.
Music to my ears.
Yeah.
Like Jacoby, yeah, and that's exactly it. They're not going to play the same role, him and Lane, obviously, if there is the right plan in place for each player. You have Zay Flowers, who can do the inside-outside, but can play on the outside off the line of scrimmage. You have Elijah Surratt now that can possibly be that big slot player for them. And I think all things considered, for what happened to him within this draft and falling down the board a little bit, I think there's an opportunity here for him to be a contributor. Yep. So I'm still excited about it. We're going to see what happens, but
yeah. Then like Raridan, like you said, can touch on him where he went to a really good landing spot in New England where they kind of didn't really attack the weapons part of their team, where you think maybe they might draft a receiver or they might go, but it sounds like they have that AJ Brown, that thing that they're leaning on, that they're kind of just waiting for that June 1st date to come and go so they don't have to deal with the contract stuff. And then didn't really address any offensive skill positions beside going after Raridan. Ended up taking him 95 overall, and he's like a really interesting player that is coming into a position group in New England that is aging and doesn't really have an explosive playmaker. And Raridan is a pretty solid blocker, a good receiver, a fluid athlete, and so pops in and kind of may be ready day one, but doesn't have to be if he isn't. And then some other guys that Chris Bell, where it's like another one of these Dolphins receivers where it's like, I don't really know what the hell this is going to look like next year. I don't know what this Dolphins room is going to look like, but they took Bell the highest at 94 overall. Another team that we were like, when is this team going to take receiver? And they go after Chris Bell, who, again, we have a ton of questions about as a player. And so it's like, you pop him at the top of the 3rd round because I guess they took Caleb Douglas higher than him.
I was going to say, right. The most shocking pick post round 1, yeah. Caleb Douglas, like 75 or whatever that was.
I already forgotten. I just mentioned him. It's like, anyway, Chris Bell, we have a ton of questions about. Caleb Douglas, I think I have even more questions about. Kevin Coleman, I think I have the least questions about, but he's not that good of a player. So you go in and it's like Chris Bell is going to be their probably number one receiver, maybe. I don't know. It depends what he looks like post ACL. But yeah, this is like, maybe he didn't get the draft capital you want. Maybe he has some question marks around them, but you can take a shot at him with a higher third.
You know where we are in Miami right now? Malik Washington, wide receiver one season.
Could be. Absolutely could be. It could be Jalen Tolbert.
It could be.
It's dire. I feel real like I love Jeff Hafley. I love Malik Willis, but it could be ugly for them this year.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of how they attacked the wide receiver position.
They want Jeremiah Smith. That's what they want.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Are they tanking? Are they using the 75th pick to tank in the draft by taking Caleb Douglas way off the fucking board? And
what if he's just so sick?
I mean,
1,200 yards.
If he is, me and everybody else will be like, "Hey, all right,
yep,
I guess this was the thing." But yeah, this was the moment on the draft floor where it was like, did you guys even talk about Caleb Douglas on Camp Dynasty? I'm like, pretty sure we gave him a badge, but it was more of like you had a great week and then you went to the Senior Bowl and I was like, oh, okay, I don't really have to care about you too much.
Yep.
And then he's a top 80 pick in the draft. So, yeah, he's not in my 48. Obviously, I didn't really touch on that, but despite the capital, there's always going to be one of these guys. The capital is the capital. I don't care about it because NFL teams make these mistakes every year. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, I got to draft Caleb Douglas because they took him at this spot. I'm going to take Chris Bell, the player that is actually a potentially good player.
Yeah.
The questions will be, is he, what is he going to look like after the ACL injury and how can they develop him there because he needs the development. And this is not necessarily an offense that, like you just said, is projecting to be a very, we can let Chris Bell sit and develop. This is going to be like hey, Chris, is your knee better? Because we need you on the field right now, which could end up being a good thing, but it could also not be. So we'll see what happens. But within this group as well, for me, Ted Hurst, that was a player you said the spot. I like the spot as well. Having a chance to kind of develop behind some of those names, definitely a player that needs some of that development, but one that I liked quite a bit as a developmental wide receiver in this draft. Skylar Bell, I mean, again, fell a little bit on draft day into the 4th round there, but talk about a player that ended up in the spot that you can really see it. 24 years old when the season starts, that's a thing, and he's not going to be a high upside dynasty asset because of that, but I think a player that could contribute in this offense, sooner rather than later, and then potentially even, you talk about this Shakir contract, and maybe this is that player that ends up kind of slotting into that role at some point down the line. I don't know. We'll see.
Yep.
But and then Trotter and Thieneman as well, 2 IDPs that liked the capital that Trotter got, like the spot that Trotter got a lot. One of the young players actually in this class in the IDP group at 21 years old. So like that as well.
I think it's kind of sick that both of the Trotter kids are linebackers too.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it's like you have a kid and he's a receiver, and it's like, oh, he's related to him, but it's just like in their blood to attack the line of scrimmage.
Yes,
that's good.
I love it, and hopefully this kid is good.
I hope so, because the last one,
kid, even though I wanted it to.
Yeah, same.
But yes, Thieneman to round it out. I mean, great spot in Chicago. Yep. Awesome capital and spot for him.
Going to be a good fantasy player. Their safeties were very usable in fantasy already, and I don't think they had the best fantasy friendly skill sets, and I think Thieneman does. So,
all right. With that said, let's dive head first into the top 24s, player by player. Start us off.
24, I have Dejon Stribling, who I think you brought up right before the draft in, was it top 24s?
He was my 24th player.
Right, and you snuck him in, and that was one of those times where I was like, oh, I kind of forgot that he existed, and then he goes 33 to the 40, yeah, 33 to the 49ers, first pick of the second round. And it's like, oh my god, like that was way higher than I think you thought, and I'm sure you have him higher here.
I have him at 19.
Yeah, and it's like I didn't expect Stribling to go this high, but it makes sense. He's a guy that's willing to get dirty. He's a good athlete, and it's like they're trying to replace Juwan Jennings, and maybe this is their guy, and have a lot of question marks in that receiver room with Ayuk, still to be determined. It seems like he's out the door, but the contract is unresolved. You have Ricky Pearsall there, who's already 30, and he's already only in his third year. That's an exaggeration, but he is not a young player. And so Stribling walks in, and there are guys like Caleb Douglas where it comes out and it's like, yeah, nobody had this guy on our board. Like, this was a reach. Then there's guys like Stribling where it comes out and it's like, no, everybody kind of likes Stribling, maybe not this high, but yeah, everybody had eyes on him and was considering him. So I think he's just a commodity in an offense, maybe not the highest upside fantasy producer, but going to be playing for the 49ers, and that's more than you can say about a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like if he was 21 years old,
right?
This is a completely different conversation with this player. He's 23. All things considered, this is obviously like the best case scenario that you could think of with him in terms of not only being the first pick of the second round, but also going to a spot that I think really fits his play style. And I think that is why they were so honed in on him, because it's the physicality that he brings. It's the tenacity as a blocker that he brings to this team that they have lost now with Juwan Jennings. And we talked about who is the receiver that they target now to fill that spot. And we threw out names like Surratt, and we threw out like other bigger players like that. It's Stribling, the one that they honed in on. And so I love the fit. That they love him. That there is the opportunity for him to get involved in some capacity right away. But then down the line, depending on what Mike Evans looks like this year, and we're going to see what Ricky Pearsall is this year, and can he stay healthy? And then beyond that, it's like, I don't know. Like, we might be talking about Stribling as the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, possibly, of this offense in like 2 years from now. And yes, he'll be an older wide receiver at that point, but the 25 years old is the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Not a bad player to have on your team.
That'll work.
So, this is definitely one where I think, everything kind of went right for him in terms of the draft. And I think there's a lot of value to be had here, because I think you have a lot of people going into rookie drafts, the ones that are more like, okay, I'm pulling up rankings and I'm trying to figure this out, that maybe weren't super familiar with who this was and view him as an overdrafted wide receiver. And that automatically makes them recoil and say, I don't want this guy. Like this is that bust profile. And I think there's going to be value to be had with him if you're able to get him at this part of the draft.
So who's your 24?
24, Anthony Hill Jr.
Okay. I have him at 20.
So this was a linebacker that we were, we talked about all year, go all the way back to last summer. He's been in the conversation. Fell a little bit in the draft, which I can't say was necessarily a surprise, because I definitely heard a lot of buzz that suggested that he was being viewed more as a developmental type of a player rather than a, cooked and ready, which makes sense. But I think the athlete that he is and the flashes that you get from him on film are very exciting. And the spot in particular is very exciting because there's a lot of runway for him to get on the field early.
Yeah, it's just Cody Barton and Cedric Gray there, and neither have gotten a ton of investment from Tennessee, none as high as Anthony Hill just got here, because I think Cedric Gray was a 4th-round pick, and Barton's on a cheaper deal. So it's like, you can pop in and attack this linebacker room and be a starter year one. Maybe towards the back half of the season or whatever, and maybe day one, because this is a green dot type of player. This is a guy that led Texas defense for multiple years, and so I could see him coming in and being ready to go as soon as game one, but maybe not too long after that if he doesn't start day one.
23.
I have Malachi Fields, and I know you have him lower. He went to the Giants at 74 overall. This could be the Giants' number 2 wide receiver, because they have Neighbors. They didn't address it with either of their first-round picks, the wide receiver position. He's a different player than Neighbors. Neighbors is, maybe one of one type of athlete, wide receiver. He's going to be their route runner. He's going to be a deep threat, on top of just being a guy that's going to get peppered with targets. Fields might end up being a sacrificial X in this offense. And that's like, if that happens, all right, he's not fantasy viable. If he ends up being a guy that Jackson Dart likes and trusts, I think there's a lot of upside here, and there's a lot of target volume to be had with Wan'Dale Robinson out of the picture. That's like a ton of targets that are vacated from this offense, and Neighbors is going to be picking those up, because the reason Wan'Dale was so involved is because Neighbors was out. But all of those targets are going to get divvied up, and so we'll see what kind of role Fields has. But I think if he's going to be involved, and if he can earn some type of keep and trust with Dart, I think he can be on the field a lot, which can end up being a viable role.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity is certainly there. It's a great situation for this player to be able to prove whether or not he belongs, in a featured type of a role at the NFL level. And we'll get to find out, I think, this year pretty quickly what this is going to look like with him.
23 for you?
Jake Golday.
I have him at 19.
So
I have
another
him
line
one spot above Anthony Hill.
Okay, so we're together in having them together.
Yeah,
but you just have them a little higher.
Yep.
So Golday, again, another linebacker. This is a theme in this draft, was that the linebackers went to spots that were very attractive for IDP purposes, because all of these guys will have chances to get on the field early. And Golday going to Minnesota is a great spot because they needed linebacker help. There are names there with Eric Wilson and
Blake Cashman.
Yeah, Blake Cashman. And then you still have Ivan Pace being that kind of like
lingering
rotational, blitzing piece for them. But Golday is going to be able to step in and bring some real, talent to this room and have that opportunity to become kind of the centerpiece of that unit, I think, with his size and athleticism. So yeah, it's definitely a player that I think deserves, as high of capital as you have him there in the middle of the second round, potentially.
Yeah. I think like when you have IDPs that are set up to have an instant impact, you like middle of the second, late second round is a sweet spot for those kind of players, because yes, they don't have the ceiling maybe of some of these receivers, maybe running backs in a normal class or tight ends, but when you have a floor of being a second round pick in the NFL and potentially starting as soon as your rookie year, I don't think you can overdraft those players by taking them in the second round. And I think Golday is in one of those spots in a really sexy defense. You can't really say that about a lot of these, where these guys are just going to get 120 tackles and like that's it. When you have a defense like this, you can count on him, having some of those splash plays just by being a part of the design, by being, in these stunts, these blitzes, by, falling back into coverage in awkward spots. You look at like what Van Ginkel did previous to being in Minnesota versus post Minnesota. And it's, he was a fine player before he got to Minnesota, but he gets there and he's like getting 3 pick sixes a season. And it's like, what the hell is this? And so it's just it's such a scheme friendly spot as well.
For sure. 22.
I have Caleb Downs here.
I have him at 20.
Right. Caleb Downs went number 11 to the Cowboys. Just a really nice place. Also, a team that needed a ton of stuff on defense, and Downs fits in really well. They've had a lot of box safeties in their day that have been, very startable. This is not that same defense, but you can, bet on the fact that Caleb Downs will be like those players. And so I just feel like with the amount of work that he's going to have to do, and with the linebackers that they have on this team, which are like DeMarvion Overshown, D. Winters, they drafted the guy out of Michigan, and I can't think of his name. He was an edge. They're going to move him to linebacker. And so he's, it's not the sexiest linebacker core. So Caleb Downs might have to fill some holes, but I think he's also just going to be put in the position to succeed. You could see like Malik Neighbors was like furious that the Giants didn't take him at 10 and let the Cowboys get him at 11. He's like, I got to deal with this guy 2 times a year. That's the kind of player that he is. He's just one of these guys that's going to be a day one force of nature.
Yep. Classic, overthinking the safety position on the NFL draft board. We've seen this happen how many times with these guys falling out of the top 10. Dallas, as you pointed out last week, very good drafting team as of late, and making the savvy move to trade up the 1 spot to make sure that they left this draft with Caleb Downs as he was, quote unquote, falling down the board at number 11. So the spot is incredible in terms of, first of all, Dallas has had fantasy relevant safeties. They've never had a safety with this level of talent.
Yeah, they made not so good safeties fantasy relevant.
Right. And so it's like, when you consider what could this look like for him, and also the fact of what you pointed out with this linebacker unit being very much under construction and, getting figured out, it's going to be a lot of opportunities for Caleb Downs to get involved against the run and in the box and in all of those ways that we love in terms of IDP. So I think all things considered, this was about as good of a spot as you could have hoped for Caleb Downs.
And your 22?
Jonah Coleman.
All right, here we go.
So here we go, baby. I got to say it. I mean, considering that we expected him to fall on draft weekend.
108's not that bad.
No.
You want your running back drafted top 100. He just missed that mark by 8 spots. Not that big of a deal.
Top of the 4th round, and to a team that the backfield's crowded. I get it. It's crowded.
But who's it crowded with?
It's crowded with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. Okay, I get it. There's an entire brigade of people out there that are behind R.J. Harvey, RB1, to the moon. I get that. I'm here to tell you that I think Jonah Coleman can cut into this work early. And I hate to say this too, but he's also younger than RJ Harvey. So, I mean, it's just like a lot younger. Yeah. So it's just a player that I think if you knew that he was going to fall to day 3, which we did, for him to go this high on day 3, and maybe the spot's not perfect, but it's still like, I can see it. I can see how you get on the field, and I can see how you earn touches here, potentially like this year, but maybe more like a next year type of thing. I think it was a good outcome.
Yeah, he could have gone to like Detroit or to Atlanta or, somewhere where you don't see a path to carries for Jonah Coleman unless there's an injury to one of the best backs in the league. And so this is a situation where things are weird, and weird is not that bad of a thing for a running back, especially not a running back that you believe in. And I think we both have faith in Jonah Coleman. Just want to say, I know I have him in the third round, but it's only 4 spots lower than
No,
this.
you hate him.
Yeah,
You
I'm
hate
out
him.
on him. I'm out on him. No, I just, it's such like I think he has to fight off 2 guys. And that's the only thing that like I'm concerned about, because RJ Harvey had moments, especially as a pass catcher last year. J.K. Dobbins comes at every year like it slapped its mom. Like he's coming in like I can't, I'm not going to be injured every year. Well, and then so we'll see with Jonah Coleman. I hope that he ends up fighting and being like their RB1B or their RB2 by end of season. And then, who knows what happens when it's, J.K. Dobbins is maybe out. And then it's him versus R.J. Harvey. Like, I think he could win that battle. So we'll see. We're known R.J. Harvey haters, and so maybe that's baked into this analysis. But I just feel like you could definitely see a world where Jonah Coleman is competing for touches at the very least.
21.
Here's Chris Brazzell for me. I know you have him a little lower.
Okay. Yep.
Brazzell went 83 overall to Carolina, and it's a really, it's an interesting player, an interesting spot, an offense that's ascending. You hope, like they looked a lot better last year than they did previous years. Bryce Young, very up and down player. When it's good, it's really good. When it's bad, it's terrible. And so you just build an offense around him and hope that you can see the good more often than the bad. And I think Brazzell adds to that because they didn't really have a receiver like this in the room. You have, a smattering of guys in this wide receiver room, but I think he ends up falling, soundly third in line behind Tet McMillan and Jalen Coker. And then he ends up being this number 3 receiver. But I think he's different than like, hey, he's going to get the third most targets, because I think Brazzell is just a chunk play guy. And if you can develop into more than just a chunk play guy, I think there's a ton of upside with Brazzell in this offense. And it's like, so you have McMillan, who's going to get the lion's share of the load. You have Coker, who's a fun player, but like, is he a real like reliable game-to-game player? I don't think anybody really knows. I think we can, hope that you found a diamond in the rough. But Brazzell, I know for sure, has the skill set, the athleticism, the route running, the speed to be a like real contributor. And you throw him a couple deep balls, he ends up with like 8 touchdowns his rookie season. I don't see that as like something crazy.
Yeah, we see him a little bit differently, and I think we always have.
Yeah.
Where I've kind of always been more skeptical about what does this look like in terms of an NFL role. And to be quite honest with you, I think I'm just out on these Tennessee guys until I see one.
Carolina.
Tennessee Volunteers.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I was like, You're out on all. I thought we loved McMillan.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Cedric Tillman was a flag plant for me that I thought was finally happening and is now dead in the water. And
it happened with Jameis. Cedric Tillman, he had a moment with Jameis.
He had his moment, and I was ready to believe.
He had like 300-yard games in a row or something.
And you want to know what happened? They drafted 2 wide
receivers. We'll get into that.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of that where it's like fool me once, fool me twice. And this is a player that I like the size, I like the fluidity. The fluidity with the speed is different. Mm-hmm. You haven't had a guy come out of this offense recently, at least the ones that we've been talking a lot about, that have had that level of fluidity within, his route running. You can say
his name.
Jalen Hyatt, Mr. Train Tracks himself.
You stole Bolitnikoff.
I'll never forgive that. Every time that comes up, I just get mad about it. But yeah, so it's a little bit of like, I'm just kind of waiting and seeing, and I'm already a little bit more skeptical. And I think this is a room that there is the chance that he gets involved there. I also think there's a chance that Coker is a real thing and that he just ends up being the wide receiver 3-4 in this offense. And
fair.
So, but yes. I am lower on these wide receivers, it seems, than you are. So we will see what happens.
Okay. Your 21?
CJ Allen.
Okay, I have him at 18. So
So
I put the three linebackers just
yep.
right up above these guys. I have CJ Allen 18, Golday 19, Anthony Hill 20.
Yep. You had the linebackers a little bit higher on the board. And again, I'll say my same spiel, great spot.
Yeah.
Just an awesome spot for this player to go to Indianapolis, and we've seen how lucrative this linebacker position has been for them. I mean, we can go back to Darius / Shaquille Leonard.
No, not Shaquille Leonard.
I mean,
it was not good once he changed his name.
It's true. Darius Leonard was the good player there.
Yeah.
Zaire Franklin was a good player there. CJ Allen stepping in now to be the next in line potentially. And a player that, again, when we talk about IDP in this class, is a little bit of a mixed bag. We have some older guys, and then we have guys like this who are newly 21 years old, will have plenty of opportunity to develop and grow in this defense and become potentially a leader of this defense as he does, coming from Georgia. Obviously we know what that defense is all about there. So I agree. I'm very excited about what Allen can be.
Yeah, this is coming after the worst year of Zaire Franklin's career, and then the Colts swiftly moving off of him, sending him to Green Bay, which, another story is like, hey, maybe career resurgence over there. But you look at, what this means for CJ Allen, basically coming into a vacant room. We talked about Golday, who has a little bit of competition, but can fight for a starting spot. Anthony Hill, who goes to Tennessee, same idea, where it's like he could absolutely be a day one starter, has some guys there. I feel like Indianapolis, it's just like, hey, CJ Allen's the plan. And so that's why you sit there and you say, well, I'm going to slot him above a little bit. Sometimes you just kind of let the draft tell you where to rank these guys.
Absolutely. 20. Do we know you're 20?
Anthony Hill.
Okay.
That's started my linebacker.
Caleb Downs.
Okay.
19.
Golday.
And I had Stribling.
Yep.
18.
CJ Allen.
CJ Allen. So I have Germie Bernard.
Okay. I have Germie Bernard at 12.
I was gonna say I'm thinking you might have him in the first round.
I do, but he closes out my first round.
Do you want to wait?
No, we could talk about him now.
Okay, so Germie Bernard goes to the Steelers. Goes second round.
Yep.
To the Steelers. Little bit weird in terms of the DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman of it all. But I still think, all things considered, it's a good spot. We don't know what the long-term future of this wide receiver room is going to look like for them. And I think it's a player that fits really well into this offense, even right now, and can only, grow in terms of the target volume and all of those things as the years go on.
Yeah, this is a player that I've kind of grown to really enjoy watching.
Your guy.
Yeah, he's one of my guys in this class, where I don't know what the Steelers quarterback room is going to be next year. I don't know if it's Drew Aller. I don't know if it's Will Howard. I don't know if it's Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if it's Mason Rudolph, But I don't think next year is the plan for Germie Bernard regardless. Like, I think he can be involved with his skill set, but I just don't see him taking over for Metcalf or Pittman. That's, maybe he can get involved as in 3 wide receiver sets and be, this big slot for them, because I think both of those guys operate best outside. So you use him as, maybe a gadgety player, as a slot player, get the ball in his hands, let him run a little bit. And then, as you transition into this next phase of this Steelers, roster, because it's a very young roster outside of those receivers on offense, and so it seems like they're planning on moving forward rather than trying to keep up this playoff mantra, this Mike Tomlin attitude. You move off of Tomlin, you just say, hey, let's pull it down to the studs and start fresh. And I think they got a lot of good players, and I think Germie Bernard's one of them. It's just like a player that is really good, that isn't a freak athlete. A lot of these guys have this athletic upside. Jeremy is fast. We saw it in the 40. Is surprisingly fast, maybe, but doesn't show it a ton on tape. Kind of, runs his routes crisp, clean. It's not flashy, but when he has the ball in his hands, he breaks tackles. When he's open, he's very open, and so I just like this player a lot. I like him as a high upside wide receiver 2, a fringe wide receiver 1, maybe if you're desperate on an NFL team, but I think he'll operate really well as a number 2 guy in an offense.
Number 17.
Antonio Williams.
Same.
Nice. I was wondering if we were like or if we were going to sync up before the first round got here.
Yep.
But he went to a nice spot, 71 to the Commanders.
Yeah. I mean, if you've listened to Camp Dynasty this year, you know that this is a pro Antonio Williams show. As the draft got nearer and nearer, I started to really realize that he was going to be a 3rd round pick, because that's just what happens to these players. These finesse slot types just go in the 3rd round. And that's just what happens. It happened to Josh Downs. It happened with Antonio Williams, who I think's I think Josh Downs was an even more talented player than this. But the point is, he goes in the 3rd round to the spot that just reopens the door for Antonio Williams to be a thing as soon as this year. And I think he has the talent to do that. I think this is a talented wide receiver. I think he wins in a variety of ways. I think there's yak skill here. I think there's catch point talent here, contested catch work down the field. I think he tested better than I expected him to test as well. You saw him flash some of that downfield talent at Clemson. And now in this room in Washington, where it's Terry McLaurin and nothing else, the opportunity is all there for him to suck up targets this year.
Yeah, this is before Washington ends up acquiring Brandon Ayuk somehow, because that feels like that's another thing that's just kind of waiting for some contract resolution.
But is Brandon Ayuk, I'm starting to wonder, is Brandon Ayuk just done playing football?
Is he going like the Antonio Brown route?
Yeah, the latest was teams can't reach him. It's not even the 49ers.
Yeah, it's nobody can reach Brandon Ayuk. We have no idea what he wants. So hard to acquire. That could absolutely be. But yeah, if this roster is what it is day 1 of the NFL season, and Antonio Williams is functionally the wide receiver 2 in this offense, it's hell yeah. That's why he jumps up here. He goes to the good spot. He's a talented player. He is sorely needed in this offense. We got a refurbish going on in Washington too. They had the one magical season, then they had the disaster season right after it, and now you're like, okay, what does this look like? Let's stop for a second. What does the Jaden Daniels era of this team look like? And you bring Antonio Williams in to help that process go along. So I like this pick a lot. I like this player a lot. So I'm excited to see what this offense looks like, with McLaurin and Antonio Williams. Even if they do add a veteran, Stephon Diggs even is still out there. There's some names, but it's I don't know, if though they really infringe on Antonio Williams, who has this fun upside.
Yeah, most likely not long-term obstacles.
Right. Going to be a 1-year vet deal, 2 years at max, and with options to get out of it. So I wouldn't be too afraid of that. But this is also why you do your dynasty draft later in the summer.
Yeah.
I think that's a lesson that we learned.
Agreed. Number 16.
Eli Stowers.
Guess where I have him?
14.
12.
Nice.
First round, baby.
Let's go. Eli Stowers went 54 to Philadelphia. Great landing spot. I mean, this is a player that we thought needed to sit for a year, or maybe have some learning opportunities year one, not be supremely involved maybe, and gets to have a year behind Dallas Goedert and gets to one of the I feel like if he was to take anybody's skill set and roll in an offense, I feel like Dallas Goedert is a great player to map onto his skill set, where he is really involved. He's catching a lot of screens. He's doing a lot of short out routes and stuff like that, and then blasting up the seam, and just a very involved player. And I think Stowers can be exactly that. Howie Roseman, harken back to Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert when he made the draft call to Eli Stowers, and that's always like, I don't know how much you want to read into that. Obviously, he's just trying to hype up Stowers and like have his, maybe he's clip farming a little bit, but it's like, whatever, it worked for me, I'm fired up. So, I am excited about this position for Stowers.
Yeah. Awesome spot. I mean, it's really, there was only a handful really that you could identify as this is where I want Stowers to go. And this would be one of them. And so that's what makes this easier for me to say full circle. We've been on this ride with Stowers, I think, and go back to the summer where he's tight end one for both of us, clearly tight end one for both of us at that point, and kind of moved down the board a little bit as, after this season started to become a little more clear. Like this is going to be a little bit more of a specialized role for him. He's not going to come into the NFL as that, inline pro ready blocking sort of, tight end. But when you think about what this could look like in terms of fantasy in this Eagles offense, I'm all the way back into what I loved about Stowers, the receiver, going all the way back to the beginning of this season at Camp Dynasty. So
Yep.
I'm very excited to see how he develops here. Obviously, like you said, having that opportunity to kind of sit for a year and be more of that, they'll get him on the field, they'll get him his targets, but he doesn't have to be the guy right away there. And then, moving forward, obviously you hope that he develops into that player.
Yeah, I saw the inverse of the, do you like this tight end for blocking or for tight end reasons or for wide receiver reasons? Where it's like, yeah, I like him for wide receiver reasons. I saw the inverse of that where I don't remember who it was, but they're like, you don't get points for blocking.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm back, baby. So.
I'm in. All right. We are at my 16.
Yep.
Mr. 101, Fernando Mendoza.
Right.
I'm just at a point where
we need
I'm
a quarterback.
like, I love this quarterback.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know if that was entirely clear through our process because we did spend so much time on the skill position guys and not a lot of time on quarterback because of the fact that this was a Fernando Mendoza and nothing else class. I really like the prospect that is Fernando Mendoza. I think he was worth the first overall pick. I think he's going to be a great player for Vegas as they build up this new offense. And I want to take that player high in the second round, even if he is not a projected high upside rushing threat at the quarterback position. I think there's a lot of sneaky upside with Mendoza. And yeah, I know. But
I was going to say it if you weren't.
His toughness in the red zone and the ability to put his body on the line. I mean, obviously, you go back to the national title game, the career defining moment for him, but that was not a once in a season moment for him. Like he's willing to run deep into the red zone and make plays with his body to get into the end zone. And I think we're going to see that in the NFL. Is it going to look like Josh Allen? No, but I think there is this, kind of perception with him that he is this statue pocket passing quarterback that I don't know is entirely accurate. And I do think that there's a little extra upside tacked on with some of the rushing touchdowns that he could pick up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I feel like, there's talk that he might not start this year. He might have to wait a season. And then, my questions are just all like upside based, where you're saying, yeah, there's sneaky upside. There's this like QB sneak. There's this red zone stuff. There could be, I feel like there could be 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns across the season. I just wonder, when you talk about these pocket passing quarterbacks that are relying mostly on, I don't think there's a ton of rushing yards in Mendoza's box score at the end of the season. It's going to be mostly reliant on passing yards, on passing touchdowns, and how many of those do you need to be a really fantasy relevant quarterback? And like how high can you take a guy who may be limited by, Jalen Naylor and Jack Besh, and Brock Bowers obviously is there. But that's going to change also as we move into this next era with the Raiders. So I just think there's a lot of questions with Mendoza, and I think a lot of it is related to how many passing yards is he going to accumulate? How pass heavy is this team going to be with Ashton Genty in the backfield? And, your best wide receiver is your tight end. And so I just feel like maybe the upside is limited a little bit, which is why he ends up a little lower for me.
And that's completely fair. I mean, I think early in his career, it's going to look a lot worse than it will potentially look in years like 3, 4.
Yeah. And how patient are you?
Right. And that's the thing. What pick are you willing to spend on a player that might not show you that return? That's going to be more of that quarterback 3 kind of a player for you out of the gate. But I think there's also this kind of, idea that the rushing quarterback has become the only appealing fantasy option.
Not
and I
true.
think and yeah, exactly. And I think we've talked a lot about that here as well. Like the Jared Goffs of the world, they finish high if the offense is humming. Like if they're getting a lot of yards, throwing a lot of touchdowns, it's all equaling the same thing. And then you look at top quarterbacks scoring each of the last several years, and you're going to be like, wait a minute, that guy was there? Like he doesn't run at all. And I mean, obviously Matthew Stafford won the MVP last year, but he had zero rushing touchdowns in 2025 and was quarterback 1 by a healthy margin.
Yep.
So it's certainly a thing that can happen. And then you consider what, a Clint Kubiak was doing with Sam Darnold in Seattle last year, and Sam Darnold being a, borderline QB1 player, albeit one that was a little bit, further off the clip of some of those guys up in the top 12, but still, considering he's Sam Darnold and was fantasy relevant at this position, I think, that's all encouraging signs for Mendoza.
Yeah, the pocket passer thing is a little bit overblown, and the rushing yards thing is overblown. It's when you play 6-point passing touchdown, which we do,
what we do.
That is kind of helps to even the playing field a little bit. Where, like you said, Matt Stafford had 30 more points than Drake May, who was in second place. But a lot of these guys have less than 400 rushing yards on the season. You look at Trevor Lawrence, you look at Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jordan Love, all those guys in the top 10, top 15, alongside the usual suspects that you would have with like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Drake May and Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert, sneaky 500 rushing yards. So I think there's a world where Mendoza could have those rushing touchdowns, like you said, in the low red zone. Also, not the end of the world if he's mostly a pocket passer.
Number 15
for me is Rueben Bain.
Me too.
Nice. Rueben Bain, sickest moment of the draft, I think.
Oh yeah.
There's been edits of him already flying around social media of him just grabbing the hat. I love, the like camera work of them like pulling down the hallway, cutting to the mirror cam of them like putting the hat on, and then like they have like a camera set up where they pull down with them, and then they go to the wide of him with Roger Goodell. And it's like it's walking down the hall with him, swaps to the mirror cam, and he snatches the hat and just keeps walking. And then they're like, "Oh shit, we gotta get this thing." And it goes to the camera that's like really far away, and it's like hustling to get to the spot. And it's like, yeah, Rueben Bain's gonna be a madman, and he already seemed like he was pissed, and he got drafted 15, which is not even a bad draft slot. But the arms thing, obviously, the arm length thing, obviously played into his fall in the draft, and he is probably going to be a monster because he took it personally, and that's just a chip that you add to his shoulder. I talked a little bit about Tampa Bay getting younger on defense. This is another part of that on top of Trotter. So I think he's got room to be a contributor day one. I don't know exactly what the contribution is going to look like, but if it looked anything if on the field like it did on draft day, I wouldn't be excited to line up against him.
Yeah, I mean the quote or the report, whatever it was like Tampa wanted to move down so bad, but then Jason Light was like, "Well, if Rueben Bain's here, I guess I'll take him." Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, and we talked about it. It's like what's going to actually happen with Bain on draft day, because the arm thing is a real thing for NFL teams, and so what can this, quote unquote slide look like? And luckily it didn't get past 15, but I think 15 was plenty far enough for a player like this to slide down the board. And obviously, like you just said, the chip is now on the shoulder for him. You saw it there. And this is a player that we have been huge fans of all year long, have considered what his fantasy, impact could look like all year long, both in terms of the pass rushing ability and the run defending ability to pick up those tackles, be on the field on all three downs, and get tackles for loss in the backfield on run downs as well. Like, there's a world here where this is a big time fantasy contributor. The question will be, what does the sack upside look like with this player? But I think even then, you're still talking about a player that's very startable, that's very nice to have in the defensive line spot, and one that I think will start, immediately for Tampa.
Yep. 14 for you.
David Bailey.
Me too.
So we're lockstep with where these edge rushers are going here. David Bailey, number 2 overall in the draft. That was the pick. After all the reporting that was done, we
tried to get Arvell Reese there.
Yep. And I think a lot of people were feeling that way. I think a lot of people felt like, yeah, but I think it's probably going to be Reese. And the Jets opted to go for Bailey, the more pure pass rusher, a player that has immense upside in terms of sack potential, has done it for 2 years at Stanford and then Texas Tech. And so he will have all of the opportunities to be the face of this Jets defense, to be that sort of 15 sack player as he continues to develop. The questions, of course, will be, is he on the field all the time? I think you have some more reservations, or had some more reservations about that than I did initially, but it's still a thing that you have to consider is, can he play the run effectively enough to stay on the field all the time? So, but I think given the vote of confidence of going second in the draft and seeing the pass rush ability that he possesses, I think he is an easy pick in this spot.
Yeah, I think this is the right place for a player like this where, yes, he's got the nuclear upside of, maybe he's getting a sack and a half at most games, and you're getting those, 10, 12, 15-point performances out of him in the DL spot. When he doesn't do that, what are you going to be seeing is my biggest question mark with David Bailey. And I think, most people's biggest question mark with David Bailey. And if he develops into a better run defender and he's on the field more to accumulate more stats, I think he could ascend into that top tier of edge rusher. But I think right now he's in more of that, hey, it's 3rd and long, go get yours, David Bailey. And I think he's, going to be elite in that kind of spot. It's just, what are we going to be looking at on 2nd and short? Is he even going to be on the field?
Number 13.
Jacob Rodriguez.
We are on a roll right now.
Yep.
Same.
Jacob Rodriguez went 43 to Miami. We tried to squeeze him into the first round. We really, but 43 is a really good spot. 11 picks out of the first round. A really interesting spot with Miami because there are linebackers there, but I think maybe there's a year gap between Jacob Rodriguez and being heavily involved, but I think he can find his way onto the field in his rookie year and I think it's going to be kind of like Jack Campbell was with the Lions, where year one he's behind Anzalone and company, and he's here and there making some good plays, but not exactly a every down contributor. But then year two, and then more so in year three, you see that full breakout, and it's like, oh, he's 100% of the downs every single play, involved. He's in the pile every single time, punching out balls. And so I think as, again, Miami also down to the studs kind of rebuild, Jacob Rodriguez is one of those spotlighted pieces on this team.
Yeah, little disappointing spot for him, just because you did want to see him like have a clear path to
like
get
if
on
he
the
was
field
in
right away.
Indy.
Yeah, exactly. Like so many of these guys got the spot where it's like, I think they're going to be on the field immediately. This is not exactly that spot. And I think what's a little bit frustrating about it is because he's an older player, if we have to wait a year for him to get on the field, then it's kind of quickly going to turn into the whole, well, he's 25, and like this happened with Logan Wilson as well, where it was like Logan Wilson was an older prospect and he had like 3 really productive years. And then it was already kind of like, I don't know, he's already like 27. And it's just, not to say that that's a bad thing, and not to say that linebackers can't, go well into the 30s, as we've seen with plenty of these guys recently. But I think it just being a pro ready player, being an older player, I think I was hoping that he could have a clear path to get on the field. Now, all of that being said, he went in the right place in the draft. And, you said it, wanted it to be a first round pick, but if he wasn't going to be, he still was right in that spot of the draft that we were looking to see. And all things considered, I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of when he will get on the field and be the long-term answer at linebacker for this team. So even if it requires a little bit of patience with Rodriguez, I think it's well worth it to take him still at this point of a dynasty rookie draft.
That's right. And next up, I have Germie Bernard.
And I have Stowers. So we are
perfect.
now into the first round, and we are starting with number 11 for you.
Kenyon Sadiq.
Okay. I have him at 8.
Okay. So I guess I'll start by saying I know I probably have him lower than most people. He went 16 to the Jets, and I hate that. I already had questions about the player, about like what exactly is Kenyon Sadiq going to look like as a professional tight end. A lot of these tight ends don't work out, and it's usually due to external circumstances, but I don't know. He's never had 700 yards in a season, and now he's in a developmental spot with a team that is going to ask him to potentially start day one and be like a huge contributor, and that could be great for his fantasy value. And like if he's ready, then this all kind of goes out the window, and it's like, hey, Kenyon Sadiq's awesome. But I think there's also a very real world where it's like Mason Taylor trots out as the starting tight end for this team, and Sadiq is still kind of figuring out exactly what he is in this Jets offense, and if he's a actual contributor or if it's going to be Omar Cooper and Garrett Wilson, and that's all the targets that are available because they're throwing the ball 18 times a game.
I mean, I would have liked it to be anywhere else.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I still believe in the talent a lot. They took him at 16 overall in the draft, which is still, a great spot for a tight end to go. What's very upsetting about it is the Mason Taylor of it all, because I like Mason Taylor a lot as a player. And I think what this says and what we saw in this NFL draft was this, obviously the rise of heavy personnel and teams investing in the tight end position. And it's not just a matter of we have a guy, it's a matter of now we have three guys that we really like in this position. And we can run 12, we can run 13. And teams were willing to spend high capital to get those tight ends. Even a team like the Jets, who had just drafted Mason Taylor in the second round last year, were willing to spend 16 overall on a player like Kenyon Sadiq, not only because of his pure talent, but also because that's how much they think that they can run now 12 personnel with these two guys and two, somewhat complementary skill sets. I think in this situation, my concern is, what does this look like for fantasy in terms of the cannibalization of targets and production with these players? And I think that's a question that we are still sort of answering in the greater scheme of tight end in the NFL right now, where we have a lot of shift happening with these personnel groups. And what does that look like for these tight ends when it comes down to pure receiving numbers? Because I have no doubts that Kenyon Sadiq can be a very valuable piece of this Jets offense, both as a pass catcher and as a blocker. But what does it look like for fantasy? And what does it look like for Mason Taylor? Like those are the questions that we have to answer or get the answers to in this upcoming season and beyond. But I think in this kind of a draft class, of course, I'm going to say that again, a player of this talent, even with this spot and even with the murkiness of it, I couldn't drop him any lower than number 8.
Like, would I rather have Sadiq at 8 or Eli Raridan at the top of the third? I don't know.
It's a valid question.
So your number 11.
Arvell Reese.
Okay. I have him at 9.
Okay. So Reese, a little bit of a fall.
Yeah, weird situation.
Just weird vibes.
We're with like the league that we're in, and it's like, oh, like that's not what we thought was going to happen.
Like, I kind of came around to it eventually when I realized that they're probably just going to play him off the ball. And that's just what it's going to be.
I mean, and that's not a bad thing, I don't think. I think that's, kind of where I wanted him to end up anyway, is like he's kind of an undersized edge. He's raw as an edge, and he ends up going to a team that's already kind of loaded up on edge. You talk about Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau as like 3 rotational edge pieces. And then they spent some money on Tremaine Edmonds in the offseason. And then you bring in Arvell Reese, and you're like, all right, you're going to play off ball, and you're going to blitz, and we probably have some packages to involve you as an edge rusher. We could run like this like new age NASCAR package that we invented back in the day with Strahan, and we can have all 4 of you on the field at the same time and get really weird. And I think that that's pretty fun. But it definitely at first was like, oh, this kind of kills him because he's not an edge player anymore. But then you think about it and it's like, yeah, but now he's just a really high upside off-ball linebacker, which I think is the best thing he could have been.
Yeah, it's all a question of how do they use him this year and like what does it look like, because like you said, they signed Tremaine Edmonds, they have all these guys on the edge. There's like a world where he's just kind of buried and he's kind of a developmental piece for them that's just getting involved in kind of sporadically. But if he is playing linebacker for them and he's on the field, like, it's a good thing, because it honestly eliminates the big question mark of, can he develop as an edge player? Like, can he do that? And am I going to spend a first round pick on a player that I'm a little bit nervous of whether or not he can learn this position at the NFL level? Rather, now he's going to be on the field. He's playing the position that he played in college most of the time. And he's a freak athlete that can fly around in this defense and make plays off the ball. So I think all things considered, it's a little strange. We're not entirely sure what it's going to look like, but I don't think it's as bad as I was originally thinking of it. My brain just wanted to slot him in because they just took Carter. They
Yeah.
just took Abdul Carter, and we all knew that that was going to be the linebacker to edge conversion. And then it was like, they're doing it again, but where is he going to play? There's no spot for him. And then it's like, oh, well,
Yep.
maybe they're just going to do that.
And he doesn't even have to play Mike in this spot, which is even better because if Tremaine Edmonds is wearing the green dot, calling the plays, being the guy that's sifting, he can just fill holes. And I think that that's also really good for him, where he can just be this will linebacker. He can be the guy that's being sent on, all these blitzes, like I said, and be this weak side backer that's coming downhill, getting tackles for loss. And so I think that this is a pretty sweet spot when you take some time to think about it.
Number 10.
I have Omar Cooper here. So I put him and Kenyon Sadiq next to each other.
I have him at 9, and
Right.
he was next to Sadiq as well.
Yeah. It's just like kind of same conversation I was having about Kenyon Sadiq. It's like Omar Cooper wasn't really productive in his college career until last year. Where he had his breakout season and then comes out and he gets picked number 30 to the Jets. And it's like, all right, we kind of knew he was going to be a first rounder. We thought he might go even a decent bit higher than this. Ended up going down, still got picked at the bottom of the first round, still to a wide receiver needy team. And people talk about like, this is a sneaky crowded room. Don't listen to that. That's propaganda. That's not true. This is Garrett Wilson.
Mitchell's not carving into these targets?
Yeah, no. This is going to be Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper, and then like Kenyon Sadiq's probably, Breece Hall is probably going to be the number 2 target earner in this offense, if I'm being honest. Omar Cooper is probably going to fall 3rd. Kenyon Sadiq's probably going to fall 4th. And how many targets are available? This is this is just a weird situation. This is a 2027 bet that you're making by taking these Jets players, because I don't think there's any real upside for a lot of these players not named Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall still. And so you hope that 2027 they get, Dante Moore, who dodged this team in this year's draft. You hope they get Arch Manning after a better year at Texas. You hope that they get, go down the list of these guys that could be coming out next year. And 2027 looks better because you are just going to be sitting on these guys for a year, and you may be disappointed that you burned a first on them after you see little production. I mean, Garrett Wilson led this team in yards with 395 last year. It's not going to look like that this year because he got some more players, but I just still don't think it's going to be fun.
Man, if you'd have told me that Cooper makes it past 16 and is falling into the later part of the first round, I'm thinking to myself, okay, we might be cooking here, because he's going to go in a spot where I think the value lines up for the player, and he's going to go to a spot that I think is good for the player. And then he went to the Jets anyway.
Yep. It's like, oh, he's going to go to a good team. Oh.
Like any of those teams at the later part of the round that needed a wide receiver, and it was just like, man, okay, I can talk myself into Omar Cooper a little bit more there. And now it's like I have to bet on the Jets figuring this thing out. And they already took Kenyon Sadiq, and they already have Garrett Wilson, and they don't have the quarterback. And it's just like, I don't know, man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what this is going to look like. And I put him at number 9 because that's the draft class. And we just have to hope, like you said, that it gets better in 27 and better in 28. And like, that's just what this is going to be. This is not a situation where you're taking a player 9th in the draft and he's going to contribute in your starting lineup this season. I can't see that happening at all.
I was at 12 in our draft, and I was sitting there, and I'm like, I hope to God Omar Cooper doesn't fall to me because I don't want to take him. It's just one of those players that I'm just like, I don't even know if I like the prospect, and I damn sure don't like the landing spot. Maybe like best case scenario, wide receiver 2 in a bad offense, and it's like, I don't love it.
So number 10 for me is Sonny Styles.
Okay, I have an 8.
And I mean, it's a player that kind of went where we expected. Like there was, of course, the talk about 4 and 5 and all that, but it was always it stops at 7.
Yep.
And it stopped at 7, and he went to the Commanders. And I think that is, all things considered, an awesome spot for him to be in the Stan Quinn defense and to have the runway to be involved immediately and for that role to only grow over his rookie season and beyond. And so I think it's the kind of IDP that in a weaker draft class you can spend, like you have him, top 8 capital on and feel good about that, and top 10 capital in my case as well. Like it's a linebacker that has a versatile skill set. I'm not entirely sure what it looks like for fantasy purposes, but man, when you consider the upside here and the situation that he's going to be playing in, it feels like a safe bet and a big swing that you can feel comfortable making.
Yeah, this feels like a really high floor and a really high ceiling, which is why I feel comfortable going 8 overall with him. A lot of these skill play, like I kind of went over with Omar Cooper and Kenyon Sadiq. It's just like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen with either of those players. I know exactly what's going to happen with Sonny Styles. I know he's going to walk into this defense and be awesome. He's gotten comps to Fred Warner by, real draft analysts. Like that's a real thing, and that's because of the skill set that he has. He's going to be a tackle maker on top of being on the field all the time because he's good in pass coverage. They've been, running the corpse of Bobby Wagner out there for the last 3 years. I think it's just going to be nice to get Sonny Styles in there and have like the exact opposite effect on your defense out of that linebacker position.
So do we know your number 9?
That's Arvell.
Okay. And mine's Cooper, and I have Sadiq at 8.
And I have Styles at
8. So number 7.
Denzel Boston.
Can't wait to have this conversation.
Is this a Concepcion for you?
It sure is.
Yep. What a world we're living in.
So just so that everybody listening understands, Collin, the biggest KC Concepcion hater on the planet, took KC Concepcion over Denzel Boston in our Dynasty rookie draft.
I'm a fraud.
And thereby proved himself as a fraud. But Here is your opportunity to defend yourself by talking about why you have Denzel Boston here at number 7.
I have Denzel Boston here at number 7 because sometimes you need to realize as a person when you're wrong and need to check your ego at the door. And I feel like I appreciate the work that I've done on these players, and I think I got clouded with KC Concepcion. I've been talking about this for months here where I'm like, I feel like I'm doing a disservice in my KC Concepcion because I've formulated this idea of this player in my head. I've always felt pretty much the same about Denzel Boston, where I was like, I like him. He's a little bit limited, but he does a lot of things really well. He's a good X receiver. He's a unique player in this draft. But when it comes to Concepcion, it's always been like, I just don't know what it is about him, but not my favorite. And I did some souls, so to add some context to this, if you didn't watch the draft and are watching this, I'd be shocked. But the Browns selected both of these players. They took KC Concepcion 24. They came right back in the top of the second round and took Denzel Boston 39 overall. And just like sitting there, I was like, oh, this is like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do when I'm on the clock. And that's all I was thinking about. And so went back to the drawing board and I'm like, okay, the Browns took Concepcion higher. They were willing to say, I don't need Denzel Boston because we're getting Concepcion. And I'm like, all right, why? Well, why is that? And then they come back and they take Boston anyway. And it's like, okay, now these two guys are going to be competing with each other for targets with Shedeur Sanders and all these questions through my head. But you go back and it's like, Concepcion does everything that I like a wide receiver to do. And even dropping the ball, like, I'm cool with that. I'm in on that. And I was like, why did I get this like clouded picture of this player in my head? And like, why did I decide that I was out on Concepcion? And I kind of just did a little bit of like memory wipe Men in Black myself and go back into it fresh and be like, what is Concepcion? What is Denzel Boston? And I just came to say like, hey, good route runner that is awesome with the ball in his hands, that gets open early in an offense that he's going to need to do that. And what the hell does this Browns offense look like this year? I don't know. And that's another question that I have that's similar to the question with the Jets. But I think there's a clearer direction for like Concepcion to be the number one receiver in this offense and Boston to be the number two. And if they can also be in on this 2027 class of characters for the number one pick, then I think you can see some clarity emerge. And I think Concepcion has a ton of upside, I think is where I ended up. I feel like Boston is kind of what he is, and that's awesome. But I feel like Concepcion has the higher ceiling, if that makes sense. I don't know if I just did a bunch of rambling.
No, I mean, I get it. Like, I get it. It's hard to see what the NFL does and say I'm smarter than them and go the opposite direction. I also fully support not having take lock.
Right.
I feel like take lock is a thing and everybody goes through it. And sometimes you want to change your mind about something, but you feel like you can't because you've already said your piece about it. And so you just don't. And there's been times where I've done that and it's, it's a thing that you end up being like, why did I do that? So I appreciate that. If you had this moment of clarity with Concepcion and you were like, I kind of just feel like I want this player more, and you did it. You literally did it on a draft day. So you put your money where your mouth is and you did the Men in Black and you just took the player.
Yep.
Why
do you think you're smarter than the Browns?
Well, okay. For better or for worse, I am usually not like that.
Yeah.
And I am usually the one to say, oh, you thought this player was better? Well, that sucks for me because I'm going to take the other one anyway because I like them better. And in this situation, it's a very fun little test to run because they're both on the same team and they were drafted relatively in the same place.
12 picks away from each other, right?
Yeah. Like, I get that Boston fell into the second round, which is a little
15,
bit surprising. Yeah, like 15 picks apart. A little bit surprising that Boston fell into the second round. But at the same time, if the Browns took a wide receiver and then 15 picks later were like, this guy's on the board, we're going to have to take another one. And they did that. Tells me that they liked Boston a lot. Obviously liked KC more. But that both of those players are going to have opportunities to compete in this offense. And so in a team that needs wide receivers, plural, both of these guys can be producers. Both of these guys should be producers in this offense. It's not a question of who's going to win the fight here and one of them is going to die and the other one's going to be the fantasy player. It's like, I think both of these guys can be pieces. The unfortunate part of it is that it's the Browns.
Yep.
I have to bet on 2 Browns receivers being fantasy relevant, which is already one more than I wanted to, or already 2 more than I wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
But in Boston's case, I think I've clearly, for months and months stated my feelings on this player, why I think he's a great player, why I think he was worth a first round pick in this draft. And on top of it all, I think this is a player that this Browns offense needed, that it tried to get with a Cedric Tillman in a way, this bigger outside player that had some ability to stretch the field, but wasn't an elite separator. And we saw that Cedric Tillman started to come alive in this offense. And it started to feel like, is this happening? And then Tillman's hurt and the quarterback spot is a mess again. And now it's like, all right, we're going to start over with Denzel Boston. I think that player can be the one in this offense that ends up being the focal point. And I think my thoughts on Concepcion was always that he's a better complementary player. And I think the skill set that he possesses, maybe that's how he ends up in the first round. A little bit more diverse, a little bit better separator. We can do a lot more things with him. I don't remember who it was, but somebody brought up the fact of, can this be the Zay Flowers for Todd Monken in this offense? And I think it can be. I think in a lot of ways, those are similar players. I like Flowers more, a little bit more, but I think generally the archetype is similar. I think that's all well and good. I think at the end of the day, I still think that Boston can be the one in this offense, with Concepcion being more of that number two that's getting these, additional touches, maybe out of the backfield and other schemed ways. But Boston can be that focal point. Maybe I'm the size guy again. Maybe I'm just like big wide receiver, number one wide receiver, and that's how I feel about it. But I'm going to go with what I thought pre-draft.
The new Jamar Chase and T. Higgins just dropped. We just need a new Joe Burrow to drop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they should find one next year if the class does what it should do. But speaking of Jamar Chase, if you go on Skylar Bell's sleeper profile right now, you will hear that he is the next Jamar Chase.
That's okay. I'll pass.
Shares DNA with Jamar Chase, athletic yak player. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
All right. Click off of that.
But all right. So
there's ironically pick 6 and 7.
Yeah. We did the thing. And so we are now on to number 5.
And this is where Jadarian Price ended up for both of us.
This is where the Dynasty rookie drafts got weird.
Yeah. So he went to Seattle, which we mocked. A lot of people mocked. We weren't unique in that, where it was like they lose Ken Walker. They have a need at running back with Charbonnet's injury late in the playoffs. There is basically 2 running back. There's really 1 running back and then 1 running back and then everybody else. And they decided that running back was their biggest need. And I think this is the right process for if you're going to take running back in the first round. Be a successful team, have a hole, fill it with a need, and that's what they did. And so I think that this is a sick landing spot. I think he's going to be basically, I think he'll be a less involved version of Ken Walker once Zach Charbonnet's 100%, but I don't know exactly what that timeline looks like for Charbonnet. I don't know if the Seahawks know what that timeline looks like for Charbonnet, and I think that's why you go ahead and spend a first-round pick on a running back, pick 32. It's like, hey, there's nobody else to fix this problem in the draft. We haven't there's not really anything in free agency that we want. Like, let's just patch this hole with the second-best guy. And so Price probably ends up in a similar spot that he was in Notre Dame, where he's a change of pace back that's awesome at what he does. But for the first 3-4 weeks, he's probably going to be an RB1.
This is the exact pick that I hate making in Dynasty. Like, I hate being in positions where I'm like, I have to take this player. And that's what this became. It became, when Jadarian Price went 32, I have to take him number 5. It would be irresponsible of me not to do this. That's not how I want to play. I want to be able to play based off of this is the player that I think should go in this spot.
Yep.
And I have my grades on my board, and it's not sorted by grade because of all of the nuance of the spots and how the kind of board dynamics go. My final board and Jadarian Price's grade is like sticking out like a sore thumb versus the rest of the guys around him. That's not a great spot to be in if you're picking number 5 necessarily. Why it is a great spot to be is that the NFL expressed confidence in this player enough to take him in the first round. And in a running back class like this one, like you just said, where it was one guy, and then before this, it was kind of like, is there another guy? And now there is. So this is the kind of thing that you could look back on in like 3 years and be like, God damn it. You know, like
Yeah.
I
Like,
had
I
to
wish
do
I'd have
this,
just
and it
taken
didn't
X
work, and
player.
I
Yeah.
could have taken this wide receiver and blah blah blah. But you have to do this, and you just have to hope that it works out, and
Yep.
that's what this is.
Yeah, this is a running back class where, if you're at pick 5 and then you have another pick at 14 and or you have another pick at 10, usually you could say like, okay, I'm going to take a higher upside wide receiver here and maybe wait to take running back and pick one at 10. You can't do that here. There is a scarcity that necessitates you take running back at 5. Sorry, that's just how it is, and he might be like I said, a change of pace back by week 6, and that's not that fun to have as your number 5 pick. But you could also have, the Ken Walker at number 5, and then you're good.
That's it. All right, let's talk top 4.
Number 4 is Makai Lemon for me.
Same.
Yep. Lemon went number 20 to the Eagles. Had one of the funniest draft stories, I think, where the Steelers were on the phone with him to take him, and then Philly traded up ahead of the Steelers and were like, "Hey, we're taking Lemon." And so, sorry, Pittsburgh. Apparently, it got leaked that they were going to take him, and so that's why Philly traded up to take him. That's a little bit tough, especially when you're the host city of the draft, and I don't know. But ends up going to Philly. This is good because A.J. Brown is on his way out. Makai Lemon steps in to be the wide receiver 2. This is not as good because Jalen Hurts doesn't like throwing to the middle of the field. Both of these wide receivers likely unhappy. A.J. Brown definitely unhappy, just is obviously leaving because of his role in this offense. So, if Makai Lemon's stepping into the A.J. Brown role, good enough production, but not like wide receiver 1 production. So, how do you feel after, post-draft? Because I think this is the same spot we had him in pre-draft.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I would say is that it's always been a top 4 for us. It's a little bit more like a 3 and a tick for me now.
Okay.
I love this player. The spot is weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird because I think about a player like Devontae Smith, who I absolutely love.
Also the same.
And what I wanted him to be, he's never been. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's playing on this team. So if Devontae Smith can't be that player, and A.J. Brown even wasn't really that player, then what is this going to look like?
Right.
What is the upside here of Makai Lemon in this offense? And to be clear, I'm not saying he can't be a good player. I'm not saying he can't be a fantasy producing player, just in the way that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have been. These guys have not been nobodies in fantasy, but it's just the fact of what does the overall finish look like at the end of the year for Makai Lemon? And it's probably going to be lower than it would have been if he had went to any of these other spots that we were talking about with him.
Yep. You can change the offensive coordinator. You can't change the quarterback. You can, but I don't think they're gonna.
We'll see.
Yep.
And the point's been raised about, the way that Hurts plays the position. How does that really mesh with the way Lemon plays wide receiver and the areas of the field that he wins in? We'll find out.
Yeah, Lemon can run outbreaking routes. He can run vertical routes. He can do that kind of thing that Hurts is good at doing. And Hurts, has shown an ability to throw over the middle of the field. I'm not going to say that he can't do it. It's just not his strength. And so Lemon probably strongest moving over the middle of the field. So that's the questions that arise. And then he also went 12 picks later than our next guy, Jordyn Tyson.
That's right, because Jordyn Tyson is a damn good player.
Yep, number 8 overall 10. To the Saints.
Top 8 in this draft class. I mean, it's the whole notion of this draft fall was bogus, and that was what it seemed like was happening with the last mock drafts that came out right before the draft. And in fact, it is Jordyn Tyson going number 8 to the Saints. Awesome spot. I'm going to say something controversial. I do it every year.
He's the wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
All right. We're both saying it then.
Okay, good. I'm not saying like week 1, Shuck's funneling him the ball and Olave is, but
I might.
I wouldn't blame you if you did. I mean, I like Chris Olave a lot. That's a great wide receiver. These are 2 great wide receivers that they have, and that's awesome. But I think when you consider who could be the guy versus who is the complementary piece, who is the 1B here, it feels a lot more like that would be Chris Olave as Jordyn Tyson comes into his own at the NFL level.
The most stacked injured reserve of all time.
Well, and that's the other question.
Yeah.
Is who stays healthy, and
right.
Do they both stay healthy? But besides all of that, yes, I think that Tyson has all the makings to be the number 1A in this room.
The Jordyn Tyson arc kind of reminded me of the Judkins arc, where he, for us, was wide receiver 1 for a long time. Carnell Tate obviously ended up taking that spot, and Genty did the same thing last year with Judkins for me. But it's always been like, okay, this player didn't change that much. Like, it's not like he's worse. In this case, Tyson got hurt. In Judkins' case, he took on a lesser role to share with Travion Henderson. And it's like, you look at what Jordyn Tyson is as a player, and he's just a sick player. It's just like what every team wants as their wide receiver 1 is a player like Tyson that is a beast at the catch point, that can make these contested catches, can get open in a blink, and like is a smooth mover just in general, is
inside,
good enough.
Outside, just runs the whole route tree.
Yeah.
I mean, what can't this guy do?
Right. And like people bring up the yak stuff, and like, sure, that's maybe the one limitation that he has. But I think overall, it's like, this guy has wide receiver 1 upside. And I don't know, like Lemon doesn't have that right now because he's going to be behind Devontae Smith, who is like a top 10 college wide receiver in history. So, and now he's moving into the wide receiver 1 spot. So we'll see.
So number 2 is Carnell Tate. And this was a pretty shocking pick on draft night.
It was so sick though.
It was very sick. Like you knew that this was going to happen with this draft, where it was going to be like, even things that aren't even being reported on are just going to happen. And it's going to be like, what? Yeah. And it happened right away at number 4, where it was, I don't remember a single person connecting these dots. I don't remember hearing a single person say Tate to the Titans is a possibility. And that's exactly what happened.
It's exactly what happened. And I wonder if it's connected to what happened the pick before, which we'll talk about. But when you see, we've been talking about how Tennessee needs to add weapons into this offense and needs to help Cam Ward and never once were we like do that by taking Carnell Tate, which feels like the easiest answer. It's like we were talking about doing it with Jeremiyah Love, and it's like how much does that that helps by bolstering the run game, but this helps Cam Ward directly by giving him a number one receiver that has the best catch point ability in the class. And it's like, hey, when you are out of like Carnell Tate can get open in structure, but when you're out of structure, I think this is going to be special. Because like Cam Ward's ability moving out of the pocket and extending plays on top of what Carnell Tate can do in contested situations and coming open late in his route, I feel like this was a like perfect match that we never really explored until it happened in the draft. And it was like, oh yeah, this feels like it was meant to be.
Yep, 100% agree with that. This was an awesome scenario for Tate to fall into for all of the reasons that you just said. And it makes him even more exciting for fantasy purposes because, we had a lot of conversations about how does he function best in an offense. We kind of have said the whole, 1A, 1B type of a thing. It kind of feels like he fits more into that mold of a player. Well, here he's going to be the 1A by a mile.
Yeah.
And he's going to have every opportunity to prove that he deserves to be an unquestioned number one wide receiver at the NFL level with a quarterback that is very much, fitting to his style of play. He will test him down the field, and Tate will have the opportunity to make those plays that he was making last year at Ohio State down the field at the catch point. And that could mean huge numbers right out of the gate. If Tate's ready to go and this offense looks better and Ward takes a step forward, this whole thing could amount to, oh shit, we got a real piece here that we picked at number 2 in this draft.
And while that was a shocking pick, maybe an even more shocking pick happened at number 3.
Yeah, shocking in a different way because it was like there was talks about this happening, but it was also like that's not going to happen though. Like this is obviously smoke. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Cardinals just took Jeremiyah Love. What is happening? Like, why on earth did you sign Tyler Algier? I don't understand why.
Well, apparently they also told him he was going to be the number 1 running back.
What changed?
Yeah,
between
like
signing Algier.
Did you watch? Did they like then watch Jeremiyah Love and they're like, oh fuck, we gotta take him.
Yeah. So I don't know what that's about. I don't have to agree with the team building strategy of it. I don't agree with it at all. I don't necessarily like. It's not that it's a bad spot for him.
It feels a lot like Saquon to the Giants.
Yeah. And Saquon was the number 1 overall running back that year. And so everything was fine. But I think when you talk about a team that has, needs on the offensive line that they did start to address in this draft, but we're uncertain what that's going to look like. They don't have, the long-term quarterback in place. We'll see what the Brissett era. Well, okay.
No, let me not.
Mr. 65 himself, Carson Beck, maybe. But for now, Jacoby Brissett still at the wheel here. And I mean, the offense has a lot of fun pieces now, like Marv take a step forward this year. Hopefully Michael Wilson came into his own, Trey McBride, obviously. And now you add an absolutely premier running back. It's a fun offense. It can be a lot of fun. Love is very obviously going to be the number 1 guy in this room, even despite all the weird names that are there. But I don't know. It's just it's just kind of strange.
Yeah, it was definitely I don't want to undersell the love of it all because it's like This is obviously the RB1 and this is going to be a sweet year for him. He's going to be super involved. Maybe he gets a few touchdowns poached and like that's going to be the extent of like maybe it's a lot like Bijan's rookie year where you're like, I wish Algier wasn't on this team and it's just going to be like the same thing. But for the most part, I think you're going to see like, hey, I see everything I need to see out of Jeremiyah Love, and it's going to be a gap year like all of these rebuilding teams. But I don't think the production of Love will suffer like it will with receivers because they are completely dependent on the quarterback situation. Love is not. Love is more dependent on the O-line situation. I mean, it'll help, but Brissett, I think, is viable enough to respect as a defense where you can't just put 8 in the box because, like, we saw some performances that he put on late in the year, and like Michael Wilson had these huge performances, and like you said, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison. Like there are names in this offense, on top of being backs that can take some of these licks that maybe if this offensive line isn't so good, Love won't have to bear the brunt of that and be this workhorse and put a ton of miles on him until they have a quarterback in place in the future, and then can wheels up for Jeremiyah Love RB1 season. And so maybe it's not going to be the like overall RB1 that like Saquon was in his first year, or even Bijan wasn't that yet, but sooner rather than later you'll see the fruits of that number 1 pick.
Yes. To be clear, this is still one of the best running back prospects we've ever seen at Camp Dynasty, and he's going to be an absolute star. So there's no reason to even entertain any weird overthinking. This is going to be a thing that is
super
very,
flex.
very good.
You still take Jeremiyah 101.
Absolutely. Yes. All right. There it is, baby.
48
to 1. This is the beast. This is our version of the beast, which it feels wrong to even say because
it's not even close.
2 hours of content versus the whatever.
Hundreds,
I don't even know
sure
what Dane Brugler's doing to get all of that stuff into the beast, but yes, this is the big one. This is what it all leads up to. And with the landing spots known, it's kind of the final puzzle pieces coming into place to get the full picture of what this Dynasty rookie class looks like. However, we are not quite done with
not
this
2027 yet.
As much as I want it to be, as much as I'm already taking steps to get into the 27 class, we're not quite done because we talked about many of them on this episode, and we're going to talk about them and more next week. IDPs are people too, and we have full IDP rankings coming with a more in-depth breakdown of the IDP landing spots and all of the potential opportunities that await some of these guys with top 20 IDP rankings next week. And then a couple more after that, sleepers, and then we bring it home. So 2027, not that far away now.
No, objects in mirror, I guess they wouldn't be in our mirror because they're in front of us, are closer than they appear, though. We're looking, starting to look respectfully at 2027. Don't want to cheat on 2026 yet, but, it's caught our eye more than once.
Oh, yeah. It's the meme. It's I'm looking back at the 27 class right now. But if you enjoyed this, the granddaddy of them all, our final 2026 Dynasty Rookie Rankings, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you are watching this on YouTube.
Which you will be, because
it will be there.
It will be there.
And we very, very much appreciate it if you take the minuscule amount of time that it takes to click those buttons, because it means a lot to the channel if you do. And if you're listening on the pod feed, anywhere that you may be listening to it, be sure that you have liked and followed and rated this podcast wherever you are choosing to listen, because that also is a great benefit to Camp Dynasty as we head toward what is potentially going to be my favorite season that we've ever done.
I hope this class lives up to the bill, because right now it seems like we've got names, and here we go.
Oh yeah, but now let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll be back next week with more 2026. In the meantime, thanks for stopping by Camp Dynasty this week, and we'll see you next week.